Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to the inaugural edition of The Iron Age Attacks! This is something that I've wanted to do for some time, and when I thought of a podcast that would be devoted exclusively to this new age of entertainment that we're experiencing, this new kind of independent zeitgeist, one of the first names that sprang to mind was someone I've talked to before and have desperately wanted to catch up with, especially given the absolute state of things just a few years hence from that encounter. Folks, I would like to reintroduce you rather, to Mr. Blaine Pardoe. How are you, sir? Thank you for joining me.
Hey, it's great to be back. I'm doing fantastic.
Yeah, that's probably where we should start, honestly, is, I guess I'd like to know how your newfound freedom has affected you since last we spoke. I suppose I should first give you a proper introduction for those who are not all that apprised. Hold on a second. Let me make sure that I've got... Yes, okay, good. You should be on. I suppose I should give you a little bit of an introduction. You've written goodness. Science fiction, military fiction. You've covered... I mean, my goodness, you do true crime. You do tons of stuff. So let's talk about your background, how you got into this. You're one of the formative fathers of the fiction of the world of BattleTech. That, of course, is how I found out about you. You've written some of the best, most highly reviewed and highly regarded works in the BattleTech franchise until, of course, you were thrown out of the temple a few years ago. So talk to
I was cast aside.
Yes. Talk to us about your nascent career, how it all started, and how things sit now with your newfound freedom as a member of the Iron Age.
I got to tell you, it's been fantastic. I think my wife made the comment multiple times now. The best thing that ever happened to me was being canceled by Catalyst.
As if you were subject to cancellation. Come on. You're the uncancelable Blaine Pardoe.
Yeah, you can't cancel somebody who actually refuses to give up. And I refuse to give up, especially to these people. The people that were coming at me are such low lives in many respects and
are you
internet
implying
trolls.
They have a life? That's not possible.
No, they really don't. And I get it, I'm still going through some of the legal stuff with it, but I started my career out writing for FASA back in the day, and they asked me to write on the first BattleTech Tech readout, and from that point on, I was cranking out BattleTech books, tech readouts, scenario sets, all sorts of stuff, all the source book material, the Comstar source book, things like that. Yeah. And every year I groveled for a novel and finally got one, and I did a bunch of BattleTech novels. Did a bunch of stuff for BattleTech over the years.
You did a little mech design and some miniature sculpting work, correct?
Yeah,
correct.
Not sculpting, but I did design a lot of the earlier mechs that we did. It's hard to keep track of them after a while. You never thought I'd get quizzed on, but there were a lot of them that I did I did the original design work on, and it was a lot of fun. I really enjoyed BattleTech. BattleTech was good to me. I have very little negative to say about BattleTech. The current licensee holders, that's a different matter, but but I don't have to say anything bad about them because they're shooting themselves in the foot a lot lately. And
let's
so it's
to kind of summarize for people who are unapprised, if you don't understand the absolute state of BattleTech, in brief, well, gosh, this is a very well-timed encounter. I didn't plan it this way, but I've been working on a video that I haven't put out yet, where I've been talking about some of this stuff. Mage Leader and some other people have covered this. Arch covered it a little bit, but there was recently a shakeup in the social media and marketing side at Catalyst. And if there's two terms that are synonymous with Catalyst Game Labs, boy, it's public relations, huh? They've been so...
They can't even spell PR.
Maybe CPR as they lay moldering on the fly. I don't know, but yeah. So they've shaken up the moderators at Discord. I had people reach out to me who were close to the situation, both at Reddit and at Discord, people at Catalyst, current employees, whatever, and now I guess former, some of them. Some are still there, but just kind of bugling the call, hey, something serious is going down here. Like, this is an actual shakeup going on, a little bit of a coup. And recently, Sarna, who are essentially the water boys for Catalyst Game Labs at this point, like, Sarna are just embarrassing themselves. If you haven't changed over to Mech Factory, the app on your phone, you really, really need to, because Sarna is just detritus at this point. But they did a sit-down, more of a shit-down interview with someone, Rem, who is the new ostensible community manager. And they've essentially been hiring and firing people like Disney at this point. They fired preemptively all of the moderators at Reddit, essentially imposed a new regime that has a new set of rules. Then they posted those rules on social media, and anybody who replied in anything other than the resounding "Jawohl, mein Führer," affirmative, was blocked. It was a massive blocking campaign, and then a number of people who didn't even respond to that post found themselves inexplicably blocked by Catalyst. I don't know if you heard about this, but it was... and it turns out... It
happened to me. I didn't post anything about it because I really didn't know a lot about it at the time. Yeah. But I was checking the website, and the next thing I knew, I was blocked. And I was like, okay, well, I didn't have to say anything. I think I've still got access to them on Facebook. Yeah. So it was pretty inconsistent how they did it, but, it's par for the course.
Yeah. I have a video that's going to break this down in greater detail, but the long and short of it is, we suspected at the time, and now it has essentially been confirmed, that Catalyst had been planning for some time how to preemptively essentially exile an entire group of BattleTech fans from the community. That they had essentially been making a list and checking it twice and said, these names are on the list, they are guilty of wrongthink. And all of them were essentially blocked in unison. They had made a block list. And whenever that statement went live, it was like...
Left-wing parasite. You expect me to sit here and listen to your drivel?
It was like execute Order 66 essentially went into effect. So
Stalin would have been proud.
Yeah, very much. And basically this interview with Sarna confirms all of that. I'll be talking about this in greater detail, but just briefly. Your thoughts. You found yourself blocked along with me. I at least quote tweeted the darn thing and made fun of it, so at least I could be blocked for relative cause. But people who had just liked the post that I had posted were all blocked. And I mean, they blocked hundreds of people in unison. What are your thoughts on what's going on with
I don't have any insight as to what's going on over there, honestly. I kind of put BattleTech in the rearview mirror because they did that to me.
Yeah.
But when I get stuff from fans and I take a look at it and I kind of chuckle. And like I said, I found out I got blocked and I was like, I didn't even weigh in on this. So... Yeah, my thought is I warned everybody the first time I was on your podcast that this was coming, that, they'd come for me, but they really had an issue with a lot of the fan community. And I think we talked about that the last time. Yeah. And, it's kind of like that meme of, where the guy's on the scaffold with the noose and he goes, first time.
Yes.
It's like, sorry, I kind of saw this coming and kind of said, Catalyst had an issue with their conservative fan base, and they did. It's a shame that they're doing
Honestly,
this.
it's not even conservative. It's just anyone who is not avowedly left is really what it is. Because if you look at it, one of the new community guidelines is that you're not allowed to discuss politics in any officially affiliated BattleTech forum or what, which is, oh my goodness, music to my ears. That's a my goodness, harpsichord concerto to my ears. Please.
Yeah.
But of course that's not true. Really what it is anyone right of Chairman Mao has to shut up, because you can see clearly with Pride anthologies and every other they're not censoring them. In fact, they're starting to push some of that stuff. So as long as you're left of center, you can be as vocal, and by God, please be vocal as you like. But if you are even middle of the road, do not venture an opinion on politics in a public forum, whether it's Reddit or Discord. All of this happened with Discord. It's funny, kind of the little pebble that touched off the avalanche was somebody pointing out that there's a leftist activist on the Discord who had kind of wound up on the test team, the demo team. They do demos, of course, for tabletop games, as you know. And and they kind of recruit loosely from people who might own game stores or might meet with a gaming group or whatever. And one of these people had just joined in the last year, but they're hardcore leftists. Then they were posting some pretty concerning things. Photos of them with automatic weaponry at fan conventions saying, this is why I show up to these conventions armed, because you never know when a turf is going to show up and I'll have to blow their head off, and all kinds of crazy stuff. And then that person wound up doxing another member of the demo community, several of them actually. And when that was brought to the previous Catalyst mods' attention, they, of course, immediately banned that person because they were making threats and doxing, and it's clearly against the rules to dox someone. And then I guess when Catalyst found out about that, because, of course, what happens? Whenever the left are canceled, they run it up the flagpole, right? They go straight to mommy. They go to the principal. And so they went to Catalyst. They went straight to Catalyst and Tops and pressured them. And then whatever happened, we don't know exactly what it was, but we can certainly speculate. The moderator who had banned that person was on their can. And the entire mod team shortly thereafter was fired. That person who was posting photos of themselves with automatic weaponry at gaming conventions was reinstated even after they doxed someone. And shortly thereafter, all of the mods and everyone who had complained were all purged as well. This is kind of the stone that touched off the avalanche. So we're going to talk about this, but it's some wild stuff. It's some wild stuff. You talk about putting BattleTech in the rearview mirror. We'll talk a little bit more about BattleTech because it's part of your past and you should be proud of it. I imagine you are, because you've done some of the most incredible stuff in that franchise. They can never take that from you. But the reason you've been able to put it behind you is you have a number of other things going on. This is the Iron Age, folks. I gave a name literally pulled right out of my dumper. The Iron Age. Just an idea, kind of a label for this entire era of independent creativity. You can just kind of smell something is happening. We might be in the nascent stages. I don't know, but you've already given an indication. You know, the newfound freedom is great. You probably, I would imagine, have to deal with far less middlemen. So,
well, you know, Brent Evans and I and a few other guys, we have a game company called Creative Juggernaut. We had Land and Sea the first 3 books ready to go.
Yes, I was just going to ask you about Land and Sea. Rap to us about it.
And I got, you know, when I got canceled, it was weird because there was a period where I was kind of down, obviously, and feeling bad about it. And then suddenly I started having publishers line up and go, we don't care about your politics, or we agree with your politics.
You know, Hank, they say Democrats are like the buffalo.
Come right for
They're
us.
big,
And I mean,
they smell,
and
they should have gone extinct ages ago.
For us. And we went with Wargate, and it was a great decision. We had a lot of good candidates to pick from, obviously, but the Wargate guys have been beyond supportive.
I apologize, Blaine. I forgot to disable alerts. It was an audible alert. Could you take it from the top there again so everybody could hear? I'm sorry. It went over your audio there for a moment. Sorry, guys. That's my fault. I forgot.
Oh, well, we got approached by 5 different publishers who wanted the Land and Sea series. We willed it down to Wargate. The Wargate guys are phenomenal to work with.
Yeah.
And you know, they were very much like, hey, we really don't give a damn about your politics, but, you know, we just want to tell good stories. And in the first year alone, we put out 6 novels in the Land and Sea series.
What was the first one? Splashdown?
Splashdown was the first one, then Riptides and Storm Surge. I mean, it's been phenomenal. Yeah. The books went bestseller on Amazon.
What's the premise for us, real quick? What differentiates it from BattleTech? It's got giant robots in it, but like what makes it distinct? What's kind of the setting and the premise?
Yeah, it's 20 years in the future, and aliens are attacking, and we have mecha suits, but they're not 3-story robots. They're smaller, you know, like Exo Squad type frame type things, and yeah, it's just a great series. It's a sci-fi military series that really it doesn't follow any of the normal tropes with an alien invasion. You know, mankind doesn't unite to fight the aliens. Mankind stays divided, and the military stays divided, and politicians are still politicians. And it's got some Tom Clancy aspects to it, and it's got the good old-fashioned stompy mech shit going on. And yes. I enjoy it. It's a lot of fun to do. I just finished book 7, and I'm halfway through book 8 writing it right now. I've embraced this Iron Age concept so much. I posted the other day, I am Iron Age, and I encourage all of you to do that, to make that trend so that it really pisses off the people that hate us. But I went out, I connected with Anvil Magazine. I've written an article for them that's tied into Land and Sea, and that'll be in the next issue. Nice. That's up right now for pre-sale. I've been working on the Blue Dawn series. I did 2 books of that last year.
I was just going to ask you about Blue Dawn. So Blue Dawn has possibly the most indescribably based premise I've ever heard. I want you now, for this audience who it will be like honey to them, explain it in detail so absolutely everyone can buy this book.
Blue Dawn really starts at the last election. On page 6, I killed Joe Biden and Kamala Harris.
What was it, a stiff
or
breeze?
The president
or
that
what?
I refer to as the traitor president calls for new elections, and the left overthrows the government. And then it's set 5 years after that series of events take place. And it's basically a Civil War book, a Second American Civil War series that really focuses on, you know, people taking back the freedoms they're taken away. People have been cracking up because I called out stuff. Like in the second book, I said they were coming around to round up pizza ovens because wood-fired pizza ovens pollute the environment. I got it out like 2 years before they started trying to do that in New York.
Yep.
I have literally got, I think, 6 pages of stuff that I put up in a blog post of things where I've predicted what they're going to do, and they've done it. So it's really tied to current affairs. The chief villain in all of this is AOC, which just gives me fun beyond all belief. You know, her as a character, and she is like Cruella de Vil on steroids, and I have a good time with it. You know, there's people that are real life people that are in the story, but for the most part, it's not. And it's a good old-fashioned, you know, modern military American Civil War story set basically right now.
Yeah.
And it's a lot of fun. And
lest anyone be like, well, Catalyst distanced themselves from this rabid maniac because of writing this book. He wrote this after. This was later. Well, I think you had it in the can or something, but it hadn't come out yet.
Yeah, well, and I told Catalyst about it, and their response at the time was, we don't care. As long as you don't mention BattleTech in it, you can write whatever you want.
Well, let's be real. Has anyone seen Mike Stackpole's Twitter feed, for crying out loud? I don't think being vocal about politics is a problem for some people.
Well, as long as you're doing the correct politics.
Exactly.
You know, Mike is one of those people that has posted up tweets about Antifa, equating them to the guys that stormed the beach on D-Day. So, you know, he's out there. He's entitled to his politics, just like I'm entitled to mine.
Exactly.
But mine cost me a gig I had for 36 years. So
yeah.
And Now, I got to tell you, the Iron Age, just so you know how far this is going, I met Mike Barron. I had him on my show to talk about his comic books. Mike is he did the second longest run of The Punisher. Mm-hmm. Mike and I I said, I'd love to collaborate with you. He said, well, what do you got in mind? I bounced around some ideas. Next thing you know, we are almost done with our first book called Tenure. In a series, and it really harkens back to those old Mac Bolan books, The Executioner.
Or gosh, there were so many of Nick Carter. There were a bunch of those in the 70s, the vigilante books in that age of the early kind of Dirty Harry stuff and Death Wish and whatever.
Well, what's really cool though is Mike and I both have been targeted through cancellation events. Both had to deal with them in slightly different ways. And we decided our guy is a vigilante, but he is going after the woke.
So it kind of reminds me a little of, you ever see that movie Joe?
Yeah.
Oh, I love that movie. For those who have not seen this movie, it's from like the 60s or 70s. It's one of the first canon films, by the way. One of the very first canon films. Might be the first. It's just a guy who goes nuts. His daughter gets raped by hippies or something, or taken by hippies, or kidnapped by him, and so he just goes on an anti-hippie rampage with a shotgun. It stars Peter Boyle of Everybody Loves Raymond fame. It's incredible. Talk to me about this thing, because I want to have Mike Barron on, but I want to have him on separately because he's done so much, and I'd like to get I didn't want to divide our time with having the two of you. So yeah, talk to me about this premise.
Well, it started with the movie Falling Down, which is one of my favorites. Every time I see Michael Douglas in that movie, I'm like, my opinion of him has morphed over the years. He is definitely the hero of that movie. And, everything goes wrong for this guy. This guy doesn't use somebody's pronouns correctly, and he's a college professor, and he loses his job. And then Antifa starts picketing him, and then they run his wife off the road. She gets killed. He gets swatted. There's a bunch of stuff that goes down. His daughter ends up being killed. And he's just literally lost his whole family because of a series of horrible events and horrible people. And he decides to go set things straight. Right. And his way of getting them set straight is by violence. And it's a fun book for us to write. It's very cathartic, and it's the start of a series. I mean, this is going to be something I think it's really going to take off, because I think people are tired of this woke bullshit.
So we're doing this in book form.
Being told what pronouns we have to use.
Yeah.
And everybody's frustrated at a certain point, but we all go, well, but it's not really impacting me. Trust me, it will eventually get to you if we don't stand up against it.
Yeah.
And we wanted to show it at its absolute worst, and then show what happens when you take a very good, honest, sincere person and push them way too far.
Yeah.
And their reaction is not going to be, I'm going to wait for the law to deal with this, because the law won't deal with it. And it is fun. It is, and it really harkens back to the whole, it's the Equalizer, it's the Punisher, it really gets to that whole Mac Bolan, the Executioner stuff. It's rekindling that whole genre called men's adventure again, where men could be men, and violence was accepted. So I've been having a blast with it. And
what format are we talking about? This is going to be a book or a comic or what?
It's going to be a novel. We're writing it as a novel. I am working on a comic book, though. I have to tell you.
Nice. All right. We love the Iron Age comics because, I'll show this off a little bit later. But let's talk about the comic book project, because it's music to the Iron Age's ears.
Oh yeah. Well, I'm telling you right now, we looked at Land and Sea and we said, BattleTech has tried several times, disastrously, I might add, to get comics off the ground.
It's insane. I talked about this with you last time. It is the single, I believe, biggest franchise failure of BattleTech is you have the comic book format sitting right there, and you somehow do nothing with it. Warhammer has had how many comics? And BattleTech just can't figure it out. They had 2 miniseries. That's it. And neither was of particularly high quality. One was just a tie-in to the animated series, right?
Yeah.
Like, and that's it.
And the other was the pirates out in the periphery.
Yep.
So, Brent and I talked about, we found a great guy who's doing a series called Door Kickers. I don't know if you've heard about it. No. It's a modern military Call of Cthulhu type thing. He's done a couple of books and they're really good. So we reached out to him and said, hey, what do you think? Should we partner with that? And we hit the ground running. And so it's a land and sea comic book. Nice. And I've already got some of the color pages back. Oh. They are phenomenal.
It's such dude, you're going to clean up on this because it's such a common sense. People love Mecca Comics. The manga market loves it. The American market loves it. And somehow just millions of dollars left on the table by whoever has owned BattleTech at any given time, whether it's FASA or now, Tops and whatever. There's just so much money left on the table to me. Giant, stompy robots. This is so easy to do.
It's so easy to do, but it's also, we're not retelling a story that's already been told in our universe. We're telling a whole new story that we left a deliberate gap in the novels to talk about, because we talked about Hawaii in the novels, but we only made vague references to it. This actually tells the story of what happened in Hawaii. And so we always had planned this.
Does it involve fake birth certificates or?
No. It's just going to be lots of Mecca. And honestly, the comic books almost got kind of a, Walking Dead kind of vibe to it,
Oh.
The freedom fighters trapped on an island in Hawaii, fighting against the alien horde. It's got some elements to it that are really kind of fun. This is going to be a lot of fun to do. I've just been having an absolute blast.
Speaking of having an absolute blast, we should talk to some of the community because people are weighing in like crazy. I have been keeping an eye on the chat, folks, so don't worry there. Let's see here. Matthew Pickard says, and this kind of is in conjunction with what you were just talking about your vigilante character. Honestly, with the Iron Age here, I really hope there's another character like Steve Ditko's The Question or Mr. A. Hopefully without any blue pilling. So if an objective avenger of evil. I think you'll get a little bit of that if you like Westerns in Ghost of the Badlands, but with a bit of, a lot of a religious bent to it. The Lord Otter encourages us by saying, "Say strong, friends. We are at the threshold of a whole new era of entertainment. Stand up, speak out, create. Hail the Iron Age." And, speak of the devil, Iron Age Media drops 50, thank you, sir, and says, "Hail, Razör and Blaine, stoked to see you on stream together again. Land and Sea is an absolute killer series that I can't recommend enough, and I'm honored to have in Anvil. When can we expect to see the Land and Sea war game in the wild?" That's a good question.
I don't know. Yeah. The war game, let me put it to you this way. I've been playing the tabletop game for 3 months now, twice a week. The game exists.
Yes.
It's got to be perfect. One of the criteria was we didn't want to duplicate BattleTech. We actually wanted to make something that was better. And that had to kind of capture the feel of the novels. Yeah. There's always that slight disconnect between fiction and game. The tabletop the system is really cool. And it's much more realistic than BattleTech. You don't have to blow off all of the armor in a certain spot before you start penetrating and doing stuff. It's got a different vibe to it completely. It's a really cool thing. We actually, Brent is meeting at Adepticon with a producer for miniatures for it. And they are doing test prints for us right now of a bunch of the miniatures we already have done. So it's a real thing. And then the role-playing game will follow separately, probably about 6 months later. It's done in terms of design. But what we really wanted to be able to do is give people the capability to roll up a character and put them in the battlefield.
Nice.
But we had to do it so that you got to bear in mind it's a lethal battlefield, so it can't be an arduous system for creating characters because they are going to die.
Right. And we wouldn't want it any other way. Gosh, the best game of BattleTech I ever played, Mech Warrior / BattleTech I ever tabletop, was this story where I had this character who was he was on a mission of revenge, and he entered the Solaris arena just to get this one guy, and I get to the very end, and one hit cockpit shot, I'm dead. First, the final battle, I went through all that, and it was the best tragedy I've ever played in my life. I was like, you know what? I'm leaving it alone. I'm not re-rolling anything. That was perfect. That was absolutely perfect. But I love that about BattleTech. I love hearing that. Gul Dukat did nothing wrong. Says,
no.
Thanks for all the stories, Blaine. Also, do you believe ESG Funds had anything to do with BattleTech's political blacklist?
I don't know. I have so little insight, and Brent still works there, and I don't ask him what's going on there at all. I don't want to know. My thought is, I don't think it's ESG Funds. Based on the discussions I've had with Lauren over the years, etc., this was something I think he had in the back of his mind. If you go back to when they first canceled me, they said that this was all part of a marketing strategy. Well, I think what you're seeing now is that strategy being slowly put out there.
It's amazing too that it's a marketing strategy that has to be this vast, calculated effort, and yet meanwhile they can't even get basic fulfillment on their Kickstarters. Which, can we just rap for a moment about how pathetic it is that a franchise as storied as BattleTech even has to resort to crowdfunding? I don't mind them going to crowdfunding. What I mind is they haven't delivered on a bunch of crap from the first Kickstarter, which I had to buy into like everybody else. Yeah. I'm still waiting on Mike. Oh, but it's available at Barnes and Noble already. It's you can get it in bookstores.
Hilarious. It's like they're literally finding new ways to shoot themselves in the foot. And I love the line that they put out with that, because it made me chuckle a little bit, because they were like, it's all Barnes and Noble's fault. So we're to believe Barnes and Noble, who does this, nationwide distribution, etc., that they made a mistake, not Catalyst. Yeah. Let's see. Let's put the ledgers side by side. Barnes and Noble, admittedly a company with problems, but a company that's been around a very, very long time and has fulfilled an awful lot of books over the decades that it's been in business. Catalyst Game Labs, who had to relaunch their own starter box how many times because they just couldn't figure out how to make one that people actually wanted to buy. What are they on their 5th iteration now? Like, come on. I mean, to me, I look at it and kind of go, there's stuff from that first Kickstarter. I've been waiting for Stackpole and Coleman's book on the origins of Wolf's Dragoons. Right. I've been waiting on the fiction, because I wrote some of it that they decided they weren't going to publish anymore, but there's fiction owed for the Honor and Glory series. Never saw it. But they went right ahead and started in on the second Kickstarter. And people are shocked when they're going, hey, Catalyst is, screwing up this Kickstarter. Stuff is showing up on Barnes and Noble shelves. And I'm like, again, they haven't finished delivery on the first Kickstarter. Yeah. And then I saw this thing. I thought it was an April Fool's joke of a flying urban mech. This is the best part. They haven't fulfilled stuff from that Kickstarter. Meanwhile, it's available on Barnes and Noble, but they have time for 3 not table legal, a land air mech version of the urban, a bunch of Urbies that are basically just a meme. It's a cash grab, right? They had time to produce that, though. It sounds like there's a cash. To me, my first impression was there's a cash flow problem, and they're solving it by getting stuff in the distribution channel. But I don't know anything. Okay, it's just my gut reaction, and I'm a bitter old fuck. Okay, I have a lot of reasons to be bitter at the leadership over at Catalyst. So, to me, I just looked at it and was like, BattleTech fans will buy it. It'll sell out. because BattleTech fans are completists. They want everything in their collection.
Well, but I talked about this a little bit in my how to support BattleTech without supporting Catalyst video. Highly recommend that, guys, if you haven't looked at it. If you want, because I don't think you all should abandon BattleTech. I think BattleTech belongs to the fans, honestly. There's been a lot of that in the chat here tonight while we were talking. I think in a lot of ways, this is a franchise that survived the death of FASA. It survived the kind of interim period where no one was sure what was going on. BattleTech was kind of dead. And keep in mind, this is after a period when they had a Saturday morning cartoon and arcades and like video games every single year. And, this was a very big franchise at one time. It basically just died in the early 2000s. And the fans kept it alive. The fans kept it alive. They kept playing the online games. They created Mega Mech. They did, they kept this thing. The people who used to work at Sana, the actual fans, the people who aren't even involved in the website anymore, those guys, they kept it going. This is, the BattleTech fans at the end of the day are still going to be there long after the catalysts of the world have filed for Chapter 11 ski, shall we say. But thank you, Scott the Celt, outlining my book and drawing the world map for it while listening. Good to hear you're being creative, sir. And don't forget to make your megaphone, a big point of the Iron Age that I always emphasize. Comstar Knight, look at this. Catalyst is not BattleTech. We are. Comstar stands firm. Thank you, sir. Beard playing Tainted Grail, Fall of Avalon, as I listen. Machine Hunter OG, good evening all. There's a great sense of strength that comes from realizing that the only time that you can actually be canceled is when you cancel yourself on behalf of these psychos. Long live the Iron Age. It's true. I've said it many times before. I don't know if you would agree, but cancel culture is a participation sport. In a lot of ways, you can't be canceled if you refuse to be canceled. If you don't give into the shame, then the kind of cultural revolution Maoist tactics, the struggle sessions, really wind up not taking root. Now, you'll still be anathema, right? You'll still be off, but there's a liberating power with that, as you've relayed to us here tonight, for certain. It gives you a lot of freedom, and with less middlemen comes, you are going to see immediate feedback to your work. You're going to, needless to say, you're going to make more money off of your work because there's no middleman in between. I mean, all of those things are very liberating for a creator. But as you've learned, and hopefully the Iron Age Attacks podcast here will attempt to redress, it's important to make our megaphones as well. It's important for people to find out about this. Which, by the way, before we move on, a fellow BattleTech fan, in conjunction with that, something I'd like to do here on Iron Age Attacks is the shout-out of the week. This was not paid for. I didn't say, I know this person, they're a fan of mine, whatever, but they've joined the Iron Age. They've got their own project. And that, of course, is, I'm going to shout out Mage Leader with, And Hell Followed Him, a Western kind of modern new pulp. It is available in ebook format on Amazon if you like that. It's just a nice little bit of brimstone and hellfire delivered at the barrel of a smoking 45 with some of that old-time religion thrown on top. If you're looking forward to the Ghost of the Badlands and you just don't know what to do with that unfulfilled energy, don't worry, we're going to be having an announcement pretty soon here. You might think of checking out And Hell Followed With Him, a fine addition to the Iron Age. And I thought I saw Mage Leader in the chat, but shout out to you. Again, not paid. He didn't talk to me, tell me to do this. I want a shout out every single time we do one of these, if possible, if I can find something. But that's something I've meant to shout out for some time.
That book's got a definite Pale Rider feel to it, guys. You need to read it.
Yeah, definitely. And so do you, I guess you kind of answered my question earlier. Do you hear any scuttlebutt from the company in question? It sounds like you're not even interested. Not that you need to divulge any of it, for the record.
No, I don't hear anything. I don't ask Brent because I don't want to put him in a bad situation, where he's got to, think about his loyalties or whatever. I don't do that. I just kind of chuckle when some of this stuff goes down. I find out about the way the fans find out about it. I found out about what was going on recently by watching Mage Leader's video, to be honest with you. It was like, oh, that's what the current controversy is. Oh, well, seemed kind of stupid to me. But.
Yeah. briefly, having nothing to do with BattleTech or even the Iron Age. Oh, I guess it could have something to do with the Iron Age, but you do some true crime stuff.
Yeah.
What do you do? You do like a podcast, don't you?
My daughter and I do a podcast. I write my true crime books with my daughter. What's been really interesting on that front, you want to talk about how you get involved in really interesting stuff. We did a book called A Special Kind of Evil on the Colonial Parkway murders. It was a serial killings back in the 1980s. Well, 2 of the crimes got solved a couple of months ago. And so there's been a whole renewed interest in stuff. We're talking with a couple of TV producers about doing some stuff with them. And, we have to go back now and amend our book because we had identified the killer in the book.
Oh, my.
As one of the suspects the FBI cleared. And it turns out that now the DNA evidence has linked him to 2 of the murders so far.
Interesting. So I find, and I love true crime stuff too. I assure you I don't own 20 cats or have multiple hair colors, but I do enjoy true crime. What is that? Why is there a uniform? But anyway, I find purely anecdotally, mind you, that many people who take an interest in true crime have some sort of formative event that spurs it. Like James Ellroy, his mother was famously murdered by a John who was never identified. That triggered his obsession with serial murder in the Black Dahlia. Was there a formative event that made you interested in true crime, or was it simply always of interest?
Honestly, my mom read Helter Skelter and was telling me when I was a kid, when it came out, she was like, this book's really good. And I was like, can I read it? And she goes, well, it's pretty gory. And I'm like, can I read it? You don't have to sell me on it. I already asked. So I read Helter Skelter. And after that, I was like, this is really interesting. Because it just doesn't, you got to bear in mind in the 70s and even in the 80s, we only got there was no internet. We got everything through the evening news, and you really didn't get a full picture of what was going on. And the true crime from that era was really good in many respects. I enjoyed it. And then my daughter, she was the same way. She wanted to read the Zodiac book, and I was like, go ahead. And after that, she became a true crime junkie too. So
yeah, that movie's great, by the way, the Zodiac.
Oh, that's a creepy ass movie.
One of the best. Is that Fincher? I forget if that's a Fincher, but it's fantastic. Regardless, absolutely great. Let's see here. Right here, Catalyst. All right. Scully Bones, Blaine Pardoe, and Nicholas Kerensky have quite a bit in common if you think Catalyst and the Inner Sphere. Oh my God. That's a question I meant to ask you last time. What is, to you, prime cut BattleTech? What is like because for a lot of people, it's this era, it's that era, it's this particular corner of the Inner Sphere at this particular time. What to you is like that's the prime cut. There it is. There's the Black Angus.
I still think that the fate of Clan Wolverine is probably the number one thing that to me is interesting, because it was interesting to have a clan stand up and go, you're batshit crazy, Nicholas. And there was a price to be paid for that. Yeah. And to me, I think that story, I made several proposals over the years about it. I don't think there was any appetite at the time. It wouldn't surprise me if they went to it at some point. But to me, that was always the fate of the last potential remnant of the real Star League would really be something worth exploring.
Right. And you hear about that all the time. My goodness, if you go to back when people still were on the BattleTech forums and on the Reddits and such, it was something that came up habitually. Clan Wolverine. Whoa, Clan Wolverine. What happened to Clan Wolverine? It's something that happens all the time, and it's amazing. Catalysts are just tone deaf with stuff like that. Of course, to be fair, FASA were as well back in the day. So would you, by the way, how would you compare and contrast the working environments of FASA, even in their declining years, and Catalysts today?
They're two very different companies. Honestly, FASA was a lot of fun because it was the Wild West back then. I mean, when we put out a source book or a tech readout or a scenario pack, those things are selling 50,000 copies.
Yeah.
I mean, they went through multiple printings.
This was back before Warhammer really took off. You know what I mean?
Yeah. And honestly, BattleTech was a lot more playable, I think, back then. It didn't have all of this burdensome, gee, I got to come to the table with 4 hardcover books to dig through everything that I want to do. It was just really a good time, and it was a lot of fun. And I think under Catalyst, it's, they've inherited what I would call the baggage of all the canon. They listen far too much to their quote unquote fact checkers, who I have a different F name for. Because the fact checkers weren't just checking facts. What they would do is go, here's what I think you should change in the story. And I'm like, I'm not interested in your input.
All right.
I'm not even interested in your fact checking because you're fact checking against stuff I wrote in some cases. And it really pisses me off when you get it wrong.
Right.
And I got chided for that once. I actually dressed down a fact checker on the forums, and that was the last time I was on the forums. I got off after that. I was like, you know what? Because Lauren's like, well, you owe this guy an apology. And I'm like, why? He was wrong.
Yeah.
And he's like, well, just apologize to him. So, I there was a lot of that kind of stuff going on that didn't happen with FASA at all.
Right.
But that, it's a different era, and people's little feelings get hurt.
Yeah, like late stage Roman
Empire. They're worried about certain people's feelings, but they aren't worried about, half of their fan base.
Yeah. No, I don't. I just, and the thing is, you've been with this franchise for so long. One of the things that irritated me the most about people have been canceled. There have been multiple failed attempts to cancel me. Doesn't really work when you just didn't care to begin with. But the thing that makes me mad isn't so much the cancellation. You expect cancellation from people who don't know how to do any other thing, right? This is their strategy. Right. This is their incrementalist strategy. It's the people who stand passively by. And you've been very dignified in your response to that. There's very vocal names in the BattleTech community who knew you. Like, you don't have to say it. I will. If you're out there and you're a voice in the BattleTech community and you happen to have known this guy, say you appeared on a podcast with him or something. In short, you happen to know he is not a Confederate flag-wielding, cross-burning grand wizard, and you said nothing in his defense when the rainbow-coiffed commies came for him, calling him everything but a child of God. Cowardice is too kind a word for you. At a certain point, inaction and conflict avoidance becomes interchangeable with complicity, you pricks. Pull your thumb out of your dumper and speak up in defense of a friend. That's the thing that bothered me the most about it. Because I know people in the BattleTech community who had been very active on podcasts and whatever, gaming tables with you, who had played games with you and every other thing, and didn't say a mumbling word in your defense. And you see that every time someone gets canceled, the people just scuttle back into the floorboards, and it is just contemptible.
It does. It eats you up, and it pisses you off quite a bit because you're like, wait, I thought we were, friends, and things along those lines. You just realize, you know what? People are afraid for their own self, too. They're afraid to take a stand because the minute you take a stand, these people go after you. They see you as a viable target as well. And I get it. Yeah. There are people are like, I don't want to be drawn into this. And it's like, well, you're going to get drawn in at some point, or you're just going to get, in this case, cut out of the community.
Once people demonstrate a capacity for backstabbing in this way, particularly with a complete dearth of evidence, a complete dearth of argumentation, with no rationale whatsoever, literally just clannish, he's part of that team, I'm part of this team, to justify. Do you understand? Like, you're in a circular firing squad at that point. And that only ends one way, right? It's not I've said it before, but a carnivorous movement inevitably acquires a taste for its own. And if you join a carnivorous movement, you are the final item on the menu. You've got to get that. Too few people understand that.
Ask the people of Haiti.
Anyways, so I asked you your favorite mech last time, though I can't rightly recall what it is now. But I will put the opposite query to you now. What is your least favorite battle mech?
The Charger, the old school Charger. It was a retard design then. It's a retard design now. It's a meme now. Not only that, just looking at the Charger, the graphic for it, it's completely freaking uninspiring. Yeah. There's no aspect of that you go, oh, well, it looks good, even though it's a piece of crap. It's like, no, it looks like a piece of crap. It is a piece of crap.
Yep. Exactly. I don't care how many meme Chargers they have in Mech Warrior Online or whatever for the 15
I don't care how you
that.
trick yours out. I will always remember, 6 tiny lasers. I will never forgive whoever did that.
Yes, I do not understand that at all. Also, I always have to ask obligatorily, what do you have against the Knights of the Inner Sphere? Because of Exodus Road and Star-Lord. What is your problem, sir? What did they ever do to you?
I honestly never really had a problem with them.
They're space knights.
People assume because we shoot people and destroy them and things along those lines that there was something personal about it. There wasn't anything personal. Somebody had to go down, and that's going to happen, you know. Besides, if I hadn't shot them, sooner or later, someone in the Free Worlds League would have, because that's what the Free Worlds League is all about.
True. You know, I'd never thought of it that way. You spared them an ugly embroilment in an inevitable Civil War-related death.
They were just going to get killed by some faction within their own government, because that's what the Free Worlds League does.
It's true. You can't kill us. We'll handle that. Thank you very much.
Well, any government that said, you know what, let's base our model on Austria-Hungary.
Yes.
You know, it's just not going to end well.
It's not just Space Austria-Hungary. It's Space Austria-Hungary, because that's the coolest thing about the Free Worlds League. At different times, they're different things, right? Like Space Austria-Hungary, Space Balkans, like Yugoslavia, Space America during the Civil War. Like, just never a good thing ever.
No, really. And their flag, let's be honest, hot purple, not a thing.
Oh, you stop it. You stop it right now. You stop it. That's the one thing we do right. It's the one thing. I'm kicking you off this podcast.
Okay, I'm going to give you that.
All right. Ladies and gentlemen, I am going to read some super chats. You have many, many questions for Mr. Pardoe, and I want to get to them all. Thank you, chat. Thank you, fellow members of the Iron Age, for talking everything from BattleTech to the Iron Age to everything you got coming up. Is there anything else, by the way, that you want to get to before we read this last bit and sign off?
Look, the bottom line is follow me on Facebook. If you want to see more about the cartoon, you're probably going to see it first on the Council of Future Conflicts channel. I pop in on that usually once every week or two. I also do a show off with them where I highlight Iron Age producers, and I've had a number of people on already. I read your book or I read your comic, and then I bring you on the show, and then we talk about it. Whereas a lot of guys have you on and they haven't read the stuff. Go buy my books, obviously, too. The best way to support me, and you really want to stick it to them, is drive up Blue Dawn sales, drive up Land and Sea sales. Because every time that happens and I say something about it, the nut jobs get unglued. Yes. And nothing gives me more fun than pissing off woke people.
Oh, yeah. Well, gosh, every time you move it, you can tell there's envy involved. Whenever you move ahead, there's always going to be a group who get cranky. I remember doing the Ghost of the Badlands. Yes, I have a working copy in my hands. We're about to we are putting the finishing touches on that right now, and I'll have a trailer and an announcement very, very soon for you all. And very soon, I mean within the next week or two. But anyways, whenever you move ahead, like when I did the Ghost of the Badlands and it raised whatever it raised, just an insane amount, way more than we ever expected. It was like 500, 600% of whatever we originally needed. Immediately, wave of negativity out of nowhere from people I'd never even heard of, right? You just get that. People quote tweet, blah, 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 this, that, right? You notice that there's a certain number of people who have bought into the kind of social version of the shrinking markets theory, right? The idea that if somebody has more of X, then I have less of X. It's other people's success is not your failure, folks. And this is an important people to keep in mind with the Iron Age. And the failure of others, likewise, is not your success. Ideally, as he pointed out in the last conversation that we had, he'd like BattleTech to be successful as well as Land and Sea, right? He'd like these things to be healthy, right? He didn't call for a boycott last time. It's important to understand that you can advance without it being at the expense of others, and that other people can advance without it being at your expense. We should a rising tide raises all boats. So let's get out there and fist pump for the Iron Age. Jeff from Denkar says 2 questions. 1, worst piece of BattleTech lore. Okay, I'll just give this to you.
Oh boy.
Emperor Palpatine Thomas Merrick is my choice.
Yeah, the Thomas Merrick going off and then coming, he's dead, but he's not dead. That was poor writing. Honestly, I look back at some of the earlier novels that were out, and I went back and started reading them not too long ago just for grins, and I'm like, wow, these storylines are really horrible. And I'm not going to slam any particular author, Mike Stackpole, but you read some of the earlier stuff, and it's like, this isn't plausible at all.
Well, there's a reason.
Technological MacGuffins that are pushed in there. Man. I mean, the fax machines thing has always been one of the things that stuck in my craw. That
so
we thought that the solution to HPG networks was fax machines.
When's the last time you heard the words fax machine? Let's be real. I like the lo-fi future as much as the next guy, but why not just use a ball and string at that point?
Yeah.
But yeah, so that's the first one. Worst piece of BattleTech lore. And 2, since Mac Bolan came up, what's your take on Phoenix Force and any chance to seeing a team like that in your books? Thank you for your hard work.
I haven't read Phoenix Force yet.
Okay.
So, I mean, in fairness, I'm not going to lie to you and say, oh, it was really good, and I hope we can do it. Yeah, it'd be easy to bullshit my way through that, but I'll be honest, I haven't read it yet. Right. That doesn't mean I won't. I'll put it on my list, and I'll get to it.
All right, let's see here. John A. Douglas, thank you for joining us, fellow member of the Iron Age. Question for the host and guest, what is both of your favorite Iron Age projects so far? Well, I already gave a shout-out to one. A book, a comic, a whatever.
Boy, there's a lot. Mike Barron's been cranking out some, Thin Blue Line and some other comics that are
Bronze
really
Star.
good.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, and he's got Goodian coming out with Eric July. Eric July's stuff has just been, there's a whole, I could spend an hour talking about the success of Eric July and what that means. Because I think it's actually important on many levels.
It's like a ground up kind of, because he didn't even start out crowdfunding as such. He took orders. Now he does crowdfunding, but he didn't in the beginning. So it's a really interesting beginning for a new comic book company, especially now. He kind of did not the opposite of what everyone was doing, but he did something different. And whatever that was, it paid off in a big, big way. Very cool to see the success that Eric July has had. Let's see here. JVP Music, I can promise that hundreds of creators got energized by this tonight. Blaine is a perfect first guest. Hammer that iron.
Thank you.
Yeah, he was one of the first names I thought of. But we're going to have many, many more. Let's see here. Phantom Lord. The question is, if we are the Romans protecting our hobbies, or are we the barbarians trying to take our hobbies back? It's like, you mean we're
That's
Visigoths?
a good question. I think what we're doing, I'm not big about the phrase parallel economy. Yeah. We're just building better things.
Yeah.
And you know what? They're going to hate them, but they were going to hate them just because we did them anyway. So why not just do them and do them really well and kick ass and take names?
Yeah. I said in my original Iron Age video, you're going to have to be twice as good for half the credit, because there's going to be a group of people who are predisposed to despise what you made anyways. They won't even read it, or they'll skim it or whatever, and just understand enough from a synopsis to bash it. You understand those people are going to be out there. Yeah. But you have to be undaunted by that. You have to be unerringly creative, and you have to be brutally honest with your own work and improve with every single creation. And of course, as I said earlier, creating your own megaphone, mounting your own megaphone so people can find out about this stuff is, I think, even more important than having a vibrant, independent creative space, because there's always been an independent creative space all throughout the 70s, 80s, 90s. There was independent comics, independently published books, and nobody ever read them. Didn't matter. Once somebody came along and shined a spotlight on them, though, that's when you suddenly have a movement. That's when you all of a sudden have something really happening, a little bit more zeitgeisty. And we've got to create that zeitgeist ourselves. And it does feel like the beginnings of that are beginning.
I think you're right. I think we're at the end of the beginning. You know, we are there. We've established a foothold on the beach at this point. Right. And now we got to exploit that foothold and break out and plow through the hedgerows and drive them into the gap and kill them all. You know, this is a great time to be a creator.
Mason McElroy, when you hire based on characteristics rather than competence, it's a statistical certainty that you will end up with incompetent employees. And that was something that we heard about some of the Catalyst kerfuffle, was that they wanted disenfranchised people of some kind to fill out the space in the company. Something like that was, and that was one of the reasons that they fired all the moderators, which, by the way, they initially denied that they had fired all the moderators, but they just owned up to it on Sarna. So, SpaghettiOs. Let's see here. Mason McElroy again. After Catalyst dropped Blaine, I bought the Land and Sea and Blue Dawn books. I haven't had time to read them yet, but they are in my backlog. A mighty large backlog for many.
Thank you.
Yeah. We talked about some of those projects last time you were on. Not Land and Sea so much, but it's been cool to see that grow as well. Let's see.
Hey, Stompy Mechs always are a favorite with people.
They are, and there's not enough franchise. You remember, though, like in the 90s, people forget how big Mech Warrior 2 was. And that created a whole influx of, you know, Earth Siege and Terra Nova, and like there was a whole influx of just mech things. There's another one that I was trying to think. Heavy Gear and stuff like that.
Yeah.
There was all of that. But speaking of which, I never asked you about. Did you ever play Heavy Gear? The tabletop?
I did play it once at a convention.
Yeah.
I really wanted to try it out. It just wasn't for me. The background material just, once I played it, I bought like one of their source books, and I was like, okay, I'm not into this.
Right.
You know, you got to have a good, rich background and a universe to play in. You could have a great game. I had zero problems with their rules. I just think, you know, you got to have a good combination of a playable game and a good background for that universe, or they can't hold together.
All right. Well, let's see here. Ladies and gentlemen, it looks like we are wrapping up here. I wanted to make this a nice compact first edition so everyone could watch it and enjoy it. If I didn't get to your chats, don't worry. They're still in the log. We can hit them when we do a Razor Fist Arcade or whatnot. But it looks like we got to most of them. Blaine, I can't thank you enough for being the inaugural guest on this first edition of Iron Age Attacks. We're going to have more and more in-depth discussions, reviews of Iron Age projects, and, of course, some sneak previews of our own Iron Age projects, such as Ghost of the Badlands, which is coming up pretty soon here, my own Hellfire and Brimstone Western. And I can't wait to share more of that with you. Anything, I know BlainePardoe.com. I have it linked in the description there. Anything else you want to plug before we move on and mosey on into the mists of the Iron Age?
Look, guys, we have to support each other. And it's the one failing a lot of publishers do is they don't get their authors to support each other. Support each other. Go buy the books, buy the products, read them. Put up reviews that are positive about this stuff. That's the only way to change the norm.
Indeed. Ladies and gentlemen, you're going to have to do 10 times as much work for half the credit, but do not weaken. Never falter. The Iron Age attacks, and it begins this week. Thank you for joining us, ladies and gentlemen. I am Razor Fist for Blaine Pardoe. Godspeed!